Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Open World. I'm Melissa. I'm here with Lara and Ale.
Hi.
Hi everyone.
And today we have a little different of an episode. So what we did is ask our community what they wanted to hear, what they wanted us to talk about. And after a few days of voting, the people spoke.
Yeah.
And the topic that was chosen is culturalization. So this is what we're going to talk about today. It's a term that we use a lot in the industry, and sometimes it's mixed up with localization. So how would you guys define culturalization?
For me, culturalization is like taking that little step forward from localization, because it's just a little bit more than just localizing a content, because we know that localization, it goes with words, with everything, but culturalization just makes it more of the culture, more of the target culture. You can see things that, yeah, maybe I localize this text, but this is offensive in my country, you know? That's just an example. So it has to be rewritten, or it has to be rethought, or I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's tailored even more, the game, even regarding current events or news that are relevant to when the game takes place.
Yeah.
It's taking a step further.
Yeah, it's taking a step further, and in the meanings of I don't know, making something more accurate or something more relatable, because maybe if I have this joke and I make it and I localize it, right, maybe the joke doesn't have the same punch if I add my culture into that joke, you know what
Absolutely.
I mean? So it's just like, yeah, it's taking that step forward from localization and trying to own that content that you're trying to localize.
Absolutely. And it makes me think of our episode about Spanish from Latin America and Spanish from European.
Exactly.
If you haven't watched it.
Please go watch it, because we explain a lot about differences and how to appropriate your own language.
Exactly. And how can this, like, cultural differences, and you know, in the case of you add that step of culturalization, how can that change a video game?
Well, in the cases of video games, it changes, because sometimes you have this absolute great idea of a video game, but you don't realize, I don't know, for example, in Fallout, you don't realize that cows are sacred in some religions in India. And in the Fallout series, you have a two-headed cow that you can actually shoot and kill. So it's just like, that had some sort of repercussion over the culturalization part of it, because maybe if the game was culturalized for this specific market, you can remove the cow entirely. I mean, it's just like, you can remove it, just it won't be as offensive as it looks like right now, even though it was not the intention, of course.
Yeah.
It is unintentional, right? But because only one person cannot know all the cultures that they have in the entire world. So that's why I think it's so important, because you do your research and you try to make your game for that specific market.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, also it's taking into account symbols, body language, gestures, even hands. I mean, in Japan, fictional characters, like, I don't know, Crash Bandicoot has 5 fingers instead of 4, like it has in America. Even Bart Simpson has 4.
It's amazing, because I remember seeing pictures of The Simpsons, and in this side of the country and in this side of the world, we have 4 fingers for all of our characters, but in Japan specifically, they have to have 5, and it looks so
interesting. Yeah, definitely.
And another example, talking about Japan, is that in Fallout you have a gun that is called the Fat Man, and the name has been changed. This is not like a major change of the entire history of the game, but it has been changed because it was too close, but it was too relatable to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so they had to change it for cultural respects and everything. But yeah,
But it can get extreme, like Far Cry 3. I mean, Far Cry 3 was completely banned from Indonesia because the local authorities thought they weren't that wrong, but the game makes it as if living in Indonesia was living hell. So they don't think that that's appropriate for their culture, for their people, and they banned the game, the entire game.
Yeah. So I think culturalization must be like really important to avoid these type of things from happening. Like from when you have your game banned from a country and you want to reach that audience and sell your game in those countries. So in that way, would you say that culturalization is a market enabler for video games?
Yes, and at the same time, I would love to add that culturalization for me is that little step that you're taking to take care of your community. Because you might find some things offensive. I don't know, I'm thinking if you've seen our latest episode of European Spanish, Latin Spanish, I mentioned this about this Grim Fandango character that he's supposed to be evil, right? And he was Argentinian, and the description of the Argentinian character and how it didn't sound right. It's just like
it's like stereotypes. There's a lot of
you could have done your. I know it's a really old game, but I think you could have done your research. I mean, it's a matter of researching or having a diverse team on your own team, so you can see the different perspectives or in which ways these can be offensive. So they open these kind of discussions between the teams and make the game go into a very much interesting direction, I believe. And another example that comes into my mind regarding culturalization and laws is that, for example, there was a law in Germany that prohibited every single thing that had to do with Nazi propaganda. So when you had, for example, the game Wolfenstein.
Yeah, you couldn't even show Adolf Hitler's mustache.
Yeah, or the Nazi symbols and everything. But then when the law got removed, I believe, because I think they removed that law, the game was patched so that everyone could see how the game was in the rest of the world. So it's just like, it is a constant thing of changing, of making the game more suitable.
Yeah, and adapted to like different.
As the world changes, I mean, video games should change as well. I mean, culturalization is a market enabler. If you think about it as a tool, in order to better reach the market that maybe the game that you originally made has things that just don't see eye to eye with with an audience,
and avoid like a tool to avoid disasters.
And as a translator, I believe it's so important to be like the gatekeeper of your own culture and flag the things that you believe it's going to be offensive on your culture or on your language, because I believe it's so important. Because it's going to deliver a better experience, and maybe the client is going to be thankful for your
so culturalization goes beyond like just language, right? It can be a lot of things in your game. So it's kind of a bit more like holistic kind of view of your game in general. How can it impact different cultures, different like geopolitical situations, and I think our point in this episode is also just bring awareness again to a topic that is really important in our industry. And
I believe also what is really important in terms with culturalization is context, because without context, how can you culturalize something, right? And we have, I believe, as translators, we can culturalize things in our ways, but sometimes we don't have the chance to change completely or an entire video game, right? So sometimes we have to adjust things as we can, or maybe the client doesn't want that too, so we have to take also that into account. So as a translator, we want to be like the gatekeepers of our culture and everything, but also taking into account what the client says, the context.
Having enough context for sure.
Enough context
And
is just, yeah.
I like that expression, the gatekeepers of our culture. I mean, in order to do that, you need a clear communication with your client so that they are satisfied with what you are bringing to the table.
Yeah, and it shows that you really care, right? Like about what your work.
This it's not gonna work.
Yeah, because you want the game to be successful in the market that you.
Absolutely, and talking about context, because imagine what kind of culturalization you could do if you have enough context, and if you know your culture, then you can maybe transform this into transcreation.
Yeah, that's another term that is widely used in the industry, and it's also like transcreation, culturalization, and they're all referred to kind of different aspects.
Yeah, not translating, transforming into something that makes sense in the target language.
Exactly. So I'm just thinking, when the first thing that came into my mind is, we all know Pikachu, right? But there are other Pokemons that have changed names in different countries and in different languages. There are a lot of examples of this.
Well, just to name one, Lickitung, that we all know Lickitung. In Spanish it's also Lickitung. In German, he's called Schlurp, like the onomatopoeia.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, the first 3 legendary Pokemons. I'm gonna mention the first era because I lost after Cyndaquil, Totodile.
We are too old.
Chikorita.
I'm playing Pokemon Scarlet. I don't know why I'm throwing myself away from.
I don't know where to start. If I, it's for another. Let's talk about it later. But for instance, the first legendary birds: Moltres, Articuno, and Zapdos. That's clearly like 1, 2, 3, you know. But actually, in Japanese, the names are Freezer, Thunder, and Fire. Straightforward names with the elements which they attack, right? It's like the legendary bird of thunder, Zapdos.
And it definitely also, like, of course, has to do with the culture, what they think it will impact. Yeah, exactly. Like, people will get it a bit more if it's more straightforward. Maybe it's all of that has to do with the culture of the country that they are targeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes not taking this extra step as a developer, right? Because as a translator, I believe we all do this. We all try to gatekeep our culture and everything, but sometimes developers don't take this extra step, and sometimes there are some bad and negative information or repercussion with that game. Maybe you can even have legal problems with this too, and I believe you want to avoid that at all costs. So maybe your game that is doing so well in America will not be properly done if you want to launch it in Japan. I don't know.
But you need to make some changes that are things that don't actually impact in the game, but they are gonna work best. They're gonna be better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what part of culturalization also. There's what's known as the proactive and reactive culturalization, which depends on the moment in the process. And there are certain things that you can think when you're planning your game. You can think, okay, this aspects, I can change them a bit around, so that people, when because you already know you want to ship your game to different places, so you think these things can be culturalized and they can connect a bit more with the target audience. What type of things do you guys think can be adapted?
There are some things. For example, there's no need to adapt everything, because I know you might want to keep the essence of your game.
Yeah, you're gonna lose something in the process.
But to me, the things that had to be changed is the things that could be prohibited because of religions, or insulting or offensive, or goes against any laws. So to me, those things have to be changed.
Yeah, and that is more like the reactive side of things.
That's more of the reactive side of the things. But for example, if you have a game like Far Cry 6, right? And you want to create this cultural immersion into the game, into letting you know that you are in Latin America. That is today, and you are in Latin America, you are in 2023 in Latin America, the first thing that comes into your mind is the music. Because, for example, that for me that's the best case, because whenever you get into a car with Dani and she turns on the radio and she starts singing with the radio, all these Spanish songs and all these, I mean, at least for me that I know, Gente de Zona, all these bands that are so welcoming and from Latin America, the level of culturalization that they have done to make things cultural appropriate for that game is just, to me, amazing. It's just, I cannot believe how is it possible that you make me feel like I was at home.
On that same spirit,
so
I mean, I think it's a constant that we mentioned Ubisoft as doing many things right. Like keeping the players in mind first. But I also remember some cultural aspects that were taken care with absolute love in the latest Assassin's Creed games. I mean, in Odyssey, they work with Greek actors with actual insults that they used back then. And even in one game before that, Origins, one of the key elements of the story is Bayek finding some stones in a certain form or shape where he remembers things and has some visions that each of these stones represent constellations that were meaningful for the Egyptians even back then. So all of those things that are from the developers themselves are so well thought of, you know, and that's to appreciate. I mean,
absolutely. Sometimes you hear music, for example, I just like when you hear, for example, the radio in GTA 5, you are transported into into the place, you know? I love it because they took like normal songs, and for some reason your brain now is attached to that memory, and you're like, I'm driving a car into the highway, like, I don't, it's so good. I mean, when it's the culturalization is taking part in the development of the game, you can really tell.
Yeah, exactly, because there's this like tools to, you know, that you can plan ahead and then connect really well with your audience. So.
Absolutely. We had last year Kate Edwards, she worked on Age of Empires. If you haven't seen that episode, please go check it out. Because when she talks about culturalization, she takes it to the absolute next level because she's a genius. And when she explains about the maps and how could be culturally inappropriate, and you start thinking, oh my God, yes, this is not good. I mean, you have to make it good, and that's what she does for a living. She just goes researching culture everywhere. So maybe also it could help having a diverse team. I know I always say the exact same thing, but for me it's so important to have different perspectives of the world. Because it will make the game more rich and more beautiful in general, right? It's just like it is going to hit that spot.
And on that same note, one of the things that is important to have culturalized is what gamers see in the stores, right? The message that comes to them before they buy the game, and even the currency that they buy the game in.
The marketing content. I mean, how important it is, culturalization and you know, trans creation in marketing. I think that's already like really established as well.
To me, it's just simply to make like a conclusion of this. It's just do your research. If you want to get to a specific market and you don't think you think that the content that you have is not going to be suitable for that market, please do your research. Have a diverse team. I think everything could be so beautiful like that. It could flow so well. And it could avoid disaster, to be honest with you. Just like it could avoid you losing money too.
And it can make you earn far more fans.
Exactly. I think people will definitely appreciate you going the extra mile. It will have a positive impact we can assure you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for watching or hearing this episode. And if you want to know more about culturalization, if you have any questions, please let us know. We're happy to hear. We're going to be reading all the comments. And yes, that's it. Thank you so much.
Bye,
everyone.
Thank you.